Now we're good.
Okay, it is 7:01. Welcome to the March 18th Township of Bedminster Township Committee meeting. Thank you all for coming out here tonight. I recognize that we have a full complement of Township Committee up here. Ms. Sullivan, can we please have the Open Public Meetings Act statement?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was sent to the Courier News in Somerville and to the Burnettsville News in Whippany. Also sent out to all subscribers and then posted here at the Municipal Building as of January 7th, 2019.
Great, thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have 4 minutes. Does anyone have any comments? If you have any comments, let me know if you forward them to Judy.
Mayor, one quick comment. Judy, one of the minutes, Trish was mentioned, but her name was misspelled.
Oh, Zupnik?
Zupnik, yeah, it said Trush.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
Thank you.
Simple edit. Sorry, I should have given that
Got
to you
it.
before.
Thank you.
And the first minutes?
Mistake in there.
Do a second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Permits and raffles, we have 3 permits and raffles. First one is a raffle license for the Center for Contemporary Art. Raffle to be held at the Center for Contemporary Art on April 28, 2019. That's an on-premise merchandise. Next raffle is raffle license for Special Olympics of New Jersey, Inc. Raffle held at Fiddler's Elbow Country Club on June 24, 2019. And on-premise merchandise. And the last one is raffle license for Special Olympics of New Jersey, Inc. Raffle held at Fiddler's Elbow Country Club on June 24, 2019, and that is a hole-in-one. Any questions about the raffles? Nope. Motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we come to what probably, while you're all here tonight, in the last couple of months, every part of Bedminster has gone through a power outage. Some areas of Bedminster have gone through more power outages than others. There's been a number of explanations for what has happened, and we've heard from JCP&L. And I thought it was probably a good time to bring folks from JCP&L up to Bedminster and extend the invitations out and the announcements out to the different parts of town and the different associations and in other areas of town, so that folks could hear and get an opportunity to talk directly to the JCP&L reps to see what's been going on, and more importantly, what can be done to alleviate the situation as we all move forward. Back in January, Tom Haynes came to us as our JCP&L rep and came before this committee and said, Larry, if you ever want me to come back here, you have an issue that you wanted me to raise or to discuss, I'm welcome to come back. I'm glad to. And so we're glad that Tom is here, and he brought 2 engineers from JCP&L.
So we didn't win the lottery.
You didn't win the lottery. So,
This is winning.
so Tom, if you can come up and take whatever microphone you want to be at.
Good evening, everyone. How are you tonight? We're here basically to discuss the March 4th outage. Happened and occurred, and I believe I told you guys that you guys were fed by 5 different circuits or substations. This occurred on the PPAC 616 circuit. It had happened at about 1:45 in the morning. A tractor trailer had clipped the communication wire on the 202 ramp. The reason the wire was low was due to the heavy snow that was on the wire. The force of the tractor trailer hitting the wire actually broke a pole, which caused several trips, which ended up causing a wire to burn up downstream. Troubleman responded. He was there within the hour. We needed to get the police there to close. Obviously, the 202 ramp needed to be closed. So we needed to do that. We also needed to get guys out there to do the flagging. So to get that done in the middle of a Sunday night, early Monday morning is kind of a tough feat in itself, but I believe my understanding was that everybody was out there by about 3:30. They had thought they would repair the wire, and that's when they had found the burnt up wire down the stream, because they thought that it was just originally the one wire. By that time, they needed to bring in additional crews. As you guys are well aware of, that whole storm, mini storm, whatever kind of storm you want to call it, caused 80,000 outages in northern New Jersey that day alone. Most of them were in the Summit and Flemington districts. So crews got there, made repairs. We were able to, approximately about 6:30 in the morning, through switching, which is when we switch one onto another circuit, which I explained to you guys last time. We were able to restore about 100 customers. We restored the remaining about 2,500 customers about 9:15 in the morning. You guys want to talk about this a little bit? Henry Posey and Ali Mahmood, engineers.
So, what happened, which should I?
Up to you, up to you.
Very good.
Oh, yeah.
You guys can hear us.
Yes,
well, right?
yes.
You can, okay. Yes, actually, 26,100 customers that were restored by switching to the PPAC circuit, which is the northern part of the tie schemes that we have in that location. So, what was done? I remember I was contacted by one of the customers here, and what we have done during the previous years, we have done some inspection and found that there was actually some tree trimming that was being done last year. So we switched over to PPAC. We were in PPAC and we switched it over to chambers for the time being. And we found that the tree trimming was needed on both circuits, and it was done. And during the year, we also found out that we need to install new pole, and also a new switch to help better with the switching that we have identified, and also install a new pole and a new line to strengthen the system. Any questions?
Yeah, we're looking to do that work. I guess I don't need a microphone. That's what people tell me I'm loud. Basically, what we're looking to do is to get that work done. However, we do have regulatory work that needs to get done. We do have a couple of projects with the state of New Jersey that we had guaranteed or committed to them. So I had talked to the manager of the line shop. I talked to his boss, who's the general manager, and I've also talked to John Paulo. Who's the engineer who's running the project. We're looking to be able to get this other tie-in by the end of the third quarter.
So will that tie-in, will that give us redundancy?
It will, yeah, well, we already have some sort of redundancy, but what we need is this extra redundancy.
Yes.
To be able to pick them up quicker.
So I guess just for, I mean, some of us have been through some of these presentations before, but how many lines feed into Bedminster and particularly the Hills Condo Associations presently?
Is it 2 or 3?
We have at least, we have 3 right now. We have, from the north, we have the PPAC.
So the PPAC line is the one that comes down 206?
202.
202, not
Yes.
206?
I think it's 202, right?
I think it's 202.
202 by the main line.
Is that, John, you?
It's gotta be 206.
It's got to be
All right,
206?
206?
It's 206.
I know it's flat out of, both 2 of the circuits are flat out of Flemington.
Okay. And it's coming from the south?
The south, that would be Chambers Brooks. And on the east, that would be Somerset. And on the west, we have Greater Crossroads.
So we do have a lot of redundancies.
So Great Crossroads is the one that's off of Lamington.
That's correct.
So the other one, and then the one on 206, the P-PAC one is just north of Bedminster, right?
North,
Yes. And then the one from
Chambers is behind Bridgewater, behind airport, over there.
behind, by Airport Road?
Behind.
Okay.
Well,
Right,
you guys-
right by.
You guys all need to get jobs at JC.
So right, is that
Experts on the
right?
system.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Pat,
so
if
I
you
mean,
want-
and I did explain last time I was here, you guys have fed many different ways by many different subs. But this project should hopefully enhance things even better.
So,
I was
okay.
gonna say, you mentioned the Chambers and P-PAC, you had done some tree trimming.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what else needs to be trimmed from that perspective to ensure maximum reliability?
From my inspection, we don't need to do much tree trimming, spot tree trimming. We just go by the cycle from now on.
Okay,
So
and
Which
that's
is every 4 years.
every
Yes,
4 years?
Yes.
Now, last time, Tom, you had mentioned the fact that you were petitioning, I think, the state to increase the aerial permission.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going. That's still part of the Reliability Plus, which we haven't heard anything back yet. We were hoping to hear of it at the end of February.
And can you let the folks know what that's all about?
Reliability Plus is, originally when we put that in, was almost a $400 million project to upgrade security, substations, infrastructure, some new technology. You want to speak about
Sure, so,
the,
so,
what do you call those again? Faulted. The,
so.
If you could just use the microphone,
You
please.
can record it.
So, for the Reliability Plus, again, like Tom said, it's a $400 million proposal that was put in front of the state that we're waiting for approval on. And that covers an expansive things, so infrastructure upgrades, some automation on some of the circuits so that, you know, like we spoke about where we're switching between different circuits, that automation would, obviously, the word says it, it would automatically switch onto a different circuit when it senses, you know, a fault on one of the circuits. So that's part of IIP. There's substation upgrades, just a couple of different projects to really improve on the resiliency of the system. So again, we're waiting to hear back on that, but we have put up a proposal to, you know, cover a couple of different things under that.
and we are looking, right now, we have the 15-foot right-of-way, which was, if Henry's was a tree, we could do 15 feet either way or around Henry. We're looking to expand that, and we're looking to go up higher with the trimming. We're not sure how that's going to go, but we have proposed that as well.
So Tom, does that require approval by the state, by the legislature?
Yes, well, my understanding is the state advocate has it right now. That, you know, he talks on behalf of the customers of JCP&L.
And from a practical application, is JCP&L finding that the 15-foot right-of-way is not enough and that
Well,
that you're still, for example, the March 4th outage was the truck and the storm.
Well, yeah.
But then there was the week before, or 2 weeks before that,
Right.
there was the incident down, I think there were two incidents. There was one incident by Far Hills.
yes.
Right,
That was the transmission outage, right.
right.
And that was a tree or a branch falling?
Tree went into a transmission pole. That's correct. If everybody, you know, not to speak nicely, but last March, I believe most of the outages that occurred last March were due to trees actually taking out poles. That's, you know, I think that was 70% of the outages were tree related.
Now, for the outage, for the tree that knocked down the pole in Far Hills, how did that affect the circuitry leading into Bedminster? So if we have one coming up from Bridgewater, Greater Crossroads, and P-PAC,
Do you remember?
how do those lines then take out a good part of Bedminster?
I want to say it was like 400 people. And I think it was the way that it was checked, but it had nothing to do with, I think it had Greater Crossroads, and I think that's what it was.
There was one incident in Greater Crossroads which I think affected, larger crossroads, and I'm trying to think what others.
Crossroads, yeah, I think that affected like 400.
But then the one in, at least the,
It was the Far
there was
Hills.
the Far Hills incident, I think also had impacted folks in the upper hills in the condo areas.
I'm not so sure how that happened. I know that that one was a long one because we had to replace like a 70-foot pole. And I do know I think we were able to bring the Bedminster and other townspeople back sooner, but the Far Hills people were out for like 12, 14 hours that day.
That outage also affected AT&T. They had switched to get AT&T back online, so it must have been coming from the Route 202 through the Burnsville area or Liberty Corner area.
Do you have any kind of proactive identification of vulnerability areas or places where you don't have diversification? Because it seems like, for example, the 202 entrance you mentioned, that went down last year as well, as I recall, and I think it was the same issue. So it seems like continuously now we are repairing it, but it seems like there are some choke points in the network where we're always getting hit, and it's repeating itself.
We can,
On Demi?
I'm sorry?
Demi,
Oh, you want to speak about the Demi?
what you want to?
Okay, no, I don't know much about the Demi.
So, I mean, specifically about what you're talking about, we have a couple of different programs in our reliability, where, one of the programs, I'll give you an example, one of the programs we have is the DEMI program, which we look at different parts of the circuits where we see multiple instances of that device operating. So, for example, I don't know this area too well, but the street coming into here, into this complex, let's say that street is fused, where it comes in. If we see that, over the last quarter, we've seen that fuse operate a couple of times, that's an indicator for us that, if it's operated a couple of times in the last 3 months or in the last 4 months, then, maybe there's a bigger issue here, so we have to take a look at that. So we have, that's a program that we look at quarterly. Every quarter we're looking at different devices that are operating. There are a number of programs within our reliability group where we're trying to get ahead of some of those recurring issues. So another program is where we look at areas where the DEMI is looking at specific devices operating. We have another program where we look at areas where customers are experiencing multiple outages. So
That one we can tell you, a lot of it's in the hills.
So, that kind of program would, instead of looking at a device, now we're looking at specifically, we have a group of 10 customers, 20 customers, 100 customers who have experienced, 4 outages this year.
Right.
Or 6 outages this year. And it's a rolling scale. As we go later in the year, that scale is going further down. So, as we're approaching the end of the year, it's 10 outages this year. Why have they experienced this? Maybe, and again, the rolling scale we've really implemented over the last couple of years to try to get ahead of it. What it used to be was where we would look at customers that have experienced 10 outages over the last 12 months. Now we're using that rolling scale so that earlier in the year we can identify that, and again, as an indicator for if I see somebody experiencing, it's March and they've already seen 4 outages, I want to wait until the end of the year before addressing the issue. So I want to try to get ahead of that and start looking at that in March. So just some examples of some things we're looking at to try to get ahead of
And does that translate into infrastructure improvements? So, for example, I'm thinking about that line that keeps going down near 202 on a ramp. I mean, at some point, you got to look and say, that's a key vulnerability area. Do we put the lines underground, as an example? And look, I'm not trying to engineer the system, but how does the identification of the problem areas and that kind of...
So that'll go then, so, these programs identify those areas, and then the engineers study those areas to see what is the root cause here. It could be anything, it could be trees. And the engineer would look at the outage history and see, the trees have caused a lot of outages in this area. The engineer will, they'll have a field inspection that they're doing. They're looking at all the data we have on our system. and putting all of that together to create a picture and then address the issue, that they're finding. If it's not trees, maybe it could be an equipment issue, where they see that, while they're driving down 206, they see that, while they're doing their patrol, the water is sagging too low. So that would be something that the engineer would then have designed to improve that, to resag the wires there, or, I'm just giving you specific examples, but it could really be anything. To relocate a pole, to relocate a line, to install additional equipment. It could be a bunch of different things, but to answer your question, when these things come in, from different programs, from different indicators, the engineers are taking a look at that and trying to come up with a solution to resolve those issues.
So I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to follow up on Collins.
Okay.
So I think, Bill, what you're asking is specifically, how do we get everybody to look at this?
Right.
So even though that's kind of, generally what happens, do we need to do something special
Right.
that would ask you and your team to take a look at, that wire that you talked about?
Or key points of vulnerability. where,
Right. Do we need to do anything, is that something we need to kind of talk to Tom about with regard to, the key areas? Because we don't know we sort of know what they are because it keeps happening.
Right.
But how do we get it to the next step, the next level?
Well, regarding this past outage, the communication wire was obviously a Verizon wire, wasn't our wire. We obviously work together now. We have a good sharing, and we share best practices and whatever we may. And we may, they may need to raise that wire 5 more feet because they're usually down here and we're up here. But we definitely work. We'll communicate with them, and if you guys, we'll meet later in this week. Tomorrow is kind of a busy day for me, but we'll meet and we'll review outages and see if there's anything we could have done differently. But we are, based on where we've come from 5 years ago, we're much more aggressive and more proactive.
I think that's true.
Yeah, we do a lot of tree trimming. I believe in the hills, we just reran how we fed them, right? We took more people off of the P-PAC and
brought it onto
Chambers Brook, and then we did some other configuration work. So we're constantly looking, we're trying to improve things.
Tom, what are the uptime numbers looking like, and what are the trends looking like over the last 12, 24, 36 months?
I think we've been,
In terms of?
Uptime, performance,
our performance has been very good. I think we were,
here's my concern is, we come around to March every year, and we just have these significant outages.
Yeah.
It just seems like, and I don't mean to beat you up, I'm just trying to figure out.
I know you're not trying to beat us up, but
Right.
the last couple of Marches have definitely been weather related.
Right, understood. But then I'm trying to say, okay, I understand where the cause is, but then in order to correlate that and figure out.
Well, obviously, we're looking to always improve our satisfaction or improve on our numbers. Our numbers have been good.
Yes.
Can you guys give us any examples for this specific area in terms of uptime numbers?
We'd have to go back and run some data, but I think we could do that.
Yes, we can do that.
I think that would be important.
Yeah.
For us to get-
One of the things I wanted to do is we've, I know the folks here tonight are probably largely from the different condominium associations in the hills. So we're turning it around to you guys. So we've got 3 different master associations. We have Hills Village, which is sort of the south, Hills North, which is the northern, and then we have the Upper Hills, Highlands area, right? So for the folks in Hill Village, if you can just do a quick show of hands, who's here from Village? And just roughly, how many outages have you guys been through in the last, let's say, 4 or 5 months?
And where I live, they less than an hour. Mine have not been bad at all, but I understand other people.
Okay, so let's go to northern, right? Let's go to Hills North. All right, show of hands, Hills North. Okay. How about you guys? Outages over the last 4 to 5 months.
She hasn't written down on a piece of paper
Jackie wrote stuff down. I am shocked.
120, January recent one?
What was the most recent one?
That was
3-4.
3-4 was the most recent one.
Yeah, the one before that was the one that was caused down by the temple.
January 20th?
Yeah.
For this year.
Or at least
So that's more than
just
4
since
in 3 months.
Yeah.
4 and 3 months.
At least.
The issue is too, I want to add, that affects all of us as well, is, you know, in the condominium association, we can't have generators. Nobody can have generators. So the power's out for 8 hours, you got no heat, the damn thing. So that's why it's becoming frustrating.
And you have to worry about pipes freezing.
No, I understand, and I get that. I do work with Jackie with other things.
Right.
If she would be more than happy to share that list, I'll get some answers and we'll look forward with our team to see what we can do to improve that.
We appreciate you.
My name is Jerry Cohen. Henry actually helped me on the phone a couple
Oh,
of
okay.
Yes. So, I've been living here 15 years, and my husband, we got married 4 years ago. He lived in Long Meadow. Never had an outage, ever, in his entire 23 years living in the house. Moves in with me, bad decision. Loves me, he hates the power outage.
Yeah, I know.
And the Wood Duck Pond area is slammed. Yeah.
So, excuse me, so Ms. Cohen, so moving from Long Meadow to Wood Duck?
It's unbelievable, so during.
And 4 hours is in the middle. 4 hours is in the middle of it.
Yeah, probably, well, it all depends on how you're fed and through what circuit you're
But
fed.
infrastructure
this is what we
there's
hear. I
some
call and I hear it's a transformer, it's a grid, it's a substation, it's a switch. I'm not in your business, I'm a financial planner, I know how to do my job really well. I don't know what you guys are doing, but Wood Duck Pond suffers constantly. And it really needs to be, certain areas are much worse than others, and as you saw, all of us here raise our hands, we all can't be here tonight. But it's gonna affect, besides just the inconvenience of everything, it affects the property values, the word is out, not to move into Wood Duck Pond because we have no power half the time. So we are, during the course of the year, I would say at least once or twice a month, and we don't sit here, like, there's a little teeny storm, and are we gonna lose power and not be able to do like normal daily?
Does not happen Friday.
Most outages are how long?
Yes.
Are they like a minute or two?
No, 3 hours, 8 hours, 4 hours.
All right, so we'll take the list and we'll research them. What I suggested, that's all right with you guys, maybe we could have one person from each
Also, is it fair to say,
association that we could work with.
It seems so, but only before Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah, that's the other thing I just wanted to mention, the Superstorm Sandy occurred, and the Long Meadow area was out, I think 6 days, we were out 11 days.
Yeah.
So I'm looking across where my car is, into other people's houses.
Right.
That have lights, yes.
It's all how you're fed and where you sit on the
But
surface.
that, I understand, so now you said, with all due respect, 70% outages due to trees, and you cut trees every 4 years.
We trim, we don't
Whatever
cut
it is,
necessarily.
70% due to trees.
Yeah, but those weren't,
Yeah.
those trees weren't in our right of way, they weren't within that 15
But
feet.
70% outages due to trees, isn't that being monitored better?
Well, that's why we're going before the state to try and improve the length of the right of way. That's what our, part of our reliability plus is.
And Henry's been helpful, so nothing about another guy before Henry, Darren Patterson, I don't know if he's still.
Yeah, Darren does,
You got transferred.
he's doing transmission now. He got
They've
transferred.
both been good, but there's still no resolution, and it's beyond frustrating. because
We hear your frustration, and we definitely will work to come to some agreement, try and find out what's going on and report back to you guys.
I'm from Long Meadow, and I just want to clarify one thing. I cross-checked with Wood Duck Pond residents. The last 4 outages, Long Meadow did suffer as well. I want to make sure it's clear.
Yes.
Happy for you. How was my check?
March 4th,
Yes.
I recall, I was diverted from the land to go south on 206, because I think the chief had a couple of units there. You said a truck hit the pole?
That's what we were told, yeah, hit the
You
communication
can steal
wire.
that
Was that?
Hit the wire. The wire was sacked up because it was
The truck still there when
I don't know the
Our
answer.
unit showed up with an empty, how do you know a truck hit it? I mean,
We were told by the line,
The foreman, the first guy on site
Did
probably.
he see the truck or?
I don't
they
know.
didn't tell me anything, just that it was a
Oh,
truck.
it's probably a new point, but
Yeah.
if you recall, the governor, in his wisdom, had a state of emergency, and what he said was no commercial trucks on any road, state or interstate, other than the turnpike and the parkway, after 12 o'clock in the morning. You're saying it's after morning, so I like.
It happened at 1:44 in the
We're the
morning.
ones out. What does our police enforcement have the right to do when a trucker does something like that? He's not supposed to be on the road. Now, you have to be there and catch
Yeah, I
it. What
mean-
legal rights we have? I mean, the governor says no trucks. Everybody saw the big amber signs. You can't listen when you're on the road. And yet these guys are still on the road and they cause, and that's the reason for having a state of emergency, so this doesn't happen. So for 8 hours, we're sitting there with no electricity because some trucker decided he was going to just drive and he didn't care about the road.
Well, I think that the low wire did impact what
They
happened.
shouldn't have been there in the first place. And if he wasn't there, it wouldn't have happened. So I just wonder,
Yeah, I
if
mean,
it's not there,
we're talking, yeah, I understand.
there's
Yeah.
nothing
Hi,
there.
so a couple of years ago, I requested a reliability study, and I spoke to someone by the name of Mike Terpstra. And they did a study, and he said, Wood Duck Pond and Four Oaks, we know you're always having outages. Sometimes they're just a blink, enough to screw up the clocks.
Right.
We're going to replace their green box, whatever that is,
Transformer.
near the daycare center. And I recently learned that, and they were here, I think it was last summer, when there were like trucks all around us, and we didn't have power for 8 hours. It was a planned outage, and we knew that. It was in the summer, luckily. And I said, oh, good, we'll be okay. But now we're not okay. Again, we can throw a baseball pretty much in any direction, hit a section that's got power that we don't. So I want to know, I was told that was going to be replaced because that was the root cause, but then I'm hearing that the root cause wasn't replaced. Can you shed some light on that?
I would have to talk to Mike. Mike's no longer, he actually works out of Flemington.
Okay.
Or no, is he in Washington?
Oh, I don't know.
I think he might be in Washington now, but we would, obviously, I can get a hold of him. I do talk to him regularly, and I can follow up on
And
that.
the other thing, he mentioned too that P-PAC was going down more, so he was switching us to Summit. But I didn't hear anything about Summit. And again, like Jerry, I'm no technical person, I'm
Right.
a technical person, but not when it cocomes to JCP&L. Where's that redundancy, and where are we being switched to?
If you are in that development we spoke about, yes, it was actually on P-PAC. It got switched over to Chambersburg.
And where's that?
How can I say that?
Is that in Summit?
No.
No, that's behind
Summit.
Bridgewater. I mean, behind, you know where the airport is? Somerset Airport?
Right,
It's
right.
back toward that way. There's Chambersburg, it's a body of water, so that's why they call it Chambersburg.
Okay.
So it's back there
Yes.
toward Bridgewater.
I was told some switching or a redundancy, I don't know whether it was I don't think it was redundancy. I think it was instead of some switching station in P-PAC was being changed to Summit. But regardless of where it is, where is that redundancy? That switch should flip over. When it gets killed in one area, it should flip over for something else to pick up that power.
Actually, it was, if we didn't have the truck that destroyed the pole, we would have restored all the customers right away. But because of that pole that was, we lost that redundancy.
Right, but that pole is where all your redundancy is?
No,
Is that what
no,
you're saying?
we have
For
3
that
more,
particular, what
just
we're
for particular.
Because somewhere in the
Henry, could you use the microphone just so that we
Oh, sorry.
can make sure that the recording is
Oh, okay.
picking you up?
Yes.
Okay.
Somewhere in the system, there should be an alarm goes off. I do have a little bit of an IT background. The alarm should be going off, and it should be triggering an automatic cutover to another system, and I'm not seeing that happen. I saw it happen after they worked on their streets a few times. I'm not seeing that happen now.
There's a type of redundancies. You have automatic and manual. So
Okay.
far, we have the manual part of it. So when an outage occurs, the customer calls and we are aware of the outage.
Okay.
We send a trouble-man, analyze it, look at it, and decide if the switch can be done manually or not.
Okay.
So, is it gonna switch over to automatic?
I mean, when are we not on automatic?
Yeah, yeah. Why don't we have an automatic switchover?
We can think about it. We can analyze and see if we can do that on that circuit as well. But,
Okay, and what about this green box? You guys will look into that?
That
That sounds like I think it's
A
an
green-
underground transformer.
Oh, it's not underground, it's sitting up on the,
a green machine.
Yeah.
It's called a green
A
machine.
green machine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, green machine, okay, so this green monster, as I will call it.
Yes.
Like, who's looking at that? If Mike Terpstra originally thought that was our root cause, you know, who will look at that? That's what you're going to do, I believe, Tom?
Yeah, well, and I think it's Pat Connolly that does,
Pat or
I'm pretty
Kovacs?
sure it's Pat
Okay,
that does
okay.
the hills now. So
Okay.
I'll talk with Pat.
Okay.
Because Jackie and I were talking about switching out a switchgear because the box is pretty rusted.
Okay.
So it's time, right?
It's up top.
But,
No, I said it's time.
It's time to do it.
Well, you know, with the switch, it's not that simple. For us to replace that, I think we were looking at taking like 10,000 customers out. That's what Mike had said to me.
you know, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've been in the hills for 30 years, 20 years in this section, and when I was in another section, the first 10 years, never had power outages. But in this section now in Wood Duck, constantly have power outages. And I'm concerned that because JCP&L doesn't want to, I'll use nice language here, tick off 10,000 customers, then Wood Duck and Four Oaks can chronically have power outages.
I don't think, the one thing that we're talking about with Jackie, I don't think that has anything to do with your outages. We're gonna have to look into that. Did you guys write down that street?
Which one is it?
Well, it's the Wood Duck Pond
Wood Duck
section.
Pond
I would be
section.
happy to
Yeah,
give
we're
you
gonna
my
have to look into
information,
that.
work with you as much as possible.
Yeah, we'll definitely look into that.
Great.
Well, what was the neighborhood that you were in before you moved to Wood
I
Duck?
was in Mayfield.
Mayfield. So Mayfield and Hills Village.
Yeah, all like the lower sections.
One thing I will
Well,
say,
Kings goes out.
I've been living in Hills Village for 19 years now, and we always had chronic little outages, more annoyances, but they always happen at a bad time, like you're blow drying your hair or laundry or whatever. And they actually, eventually, after years, traced it to the transformer down by the King's Supermarket. Because every time we got any kind of heavy rain, it was taking out the transformer. And they went, they rebuilt it, and they put a new one in, and they did all sorts of stuff, and knock wood. We've been great ever since. You know, we had some little outages, but nothing major.
I'm Ann Wick. I live in Stone Run 2 in Hills Village. And although I agree with most of what you're saying, I'm in Stone Run 2. I'm kind of in the same position that some of these folks are. I look out my side and back windows and I see Pinedale and Edgewood are on. Stone Run 2 is out. And when I was on the executive board a few years ago, I spoke with a John Anderson and a Glenn Conover about the problem because we were having so many interruptions and outages and stuff. And I work from home, so when I lose power, I get screwed up because I'm on conference calls all over the country and I have no router, I can't get that back. We also have residents in our neighborhood who are on medical equipment that require electricity. So if you don't have power, those folks are kind of in trouble. So I've noticed the past few months, the power outages have been longer, not as short as the others. Prior to that, between when I spoke with these folks and just a few months ago, they were little short interruptions that I was told were kind of like protection from surges. That still interrupted service, but it went back on after about 5, 20 seconds, something like that. These other ones have been on the, about hours, a few hours. And I work for AT&T, and I was on the phone with my boss when the AT&T building went down twice in the past month, and everybody was sent home. So the area still has problems that we need to make sure are addressed.
So I want to just finish up what I was saying to so it sounds like you need to go back and analyze, which I'm a little surprised at because I thought that had already been done for our areas.
It may have been done by other people,
So, okay, so now we got a new Cracker Jacks.
Oh, yeah.
So that's good.
Mike Terpstra, I mean, there's opportunities. He was in Flemington for a long time. I think he was able to go closer to home, so he went closer to home, and that's why he's in Washington now. But
So,
Pat Connolly is the new guy here, and we'll all work together to get this resolved.
okay, and
Absolutely.
the DEMI program that you mentioned that looks at things, it sounds like it's a new program. Because we've suffered these chronic problems for so long, how do we get prioritized? Is there a way to get us prioritized? I know we're maybe a small enclave compared to the rest of New Jersey, but, we're hurting.
Well, I mean, just the fact that only you took your time out of your busy schedule to come, we respect that and we understand that. We definitely will follow up on that. I don't like to look at it as a non-priority or a high priority. You're obviously here, you want your power to be, run on a regular basis. We have to look and we need to see what we need to improve.
So what would be your timeline to get back to us with updates, having done the
I
analysis?
think, well, we need to figure out how we're gonna funnel that information out. Do we have one person from each development?
Jackie, you want to work with me, or you want me to be it?
Well, however you guys want to do that, I think it would be good to get the informational, you guys don't want to be.
Well, we have a number, well, we love being the convener,
right.
and I think it's certainly the township's responsibility to
Right.
convene you all together.
Absolutely.
And Tom, we thank you for coming out, and we also thank all the residents for coming out. Well, Dolan just left, but we do have a couple association presidents here.
Yeah.
Right? So I would actually suggest that the association management, whether it's the presidents of the individual condominium associations or the masters, that you guys pick some reps to coordinate directly with JCP&L. But at the same time, I would like to see the township to stay involved in that.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't mean not to. We would obviously provide you an update as we go. But if we had one or two people that we could run all the communication through, that would be.
And Tom, I do have one other question, because
Sure.
we've heard from folks in Village and from Northern. What about Crestmont Highlands? No?
Perfect reliability.
Perfect reliability.
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Make a couple of statements. Last summer, when there were 2 transformers by the daycare center on Robertson and King, part of that wood duct had a lot of temporary outages, just like you were talking about. That has radically changed. We've only had 2 major things, and everybody talked about them tonight. So changing those transformers was a miracle.
Okay.
My question is, those 2 transformers, the reason that we reported them originally, Jerry, I think, was looking from the point of really getting the thing fixed, but I was looking at it just for the master from the point of aesthetics. And it turned out that it was not only aesthetics, but there were all rotten wires inside and rodent infested, et cetera, et cetera. So if there are other machines in the area throughout the hills that are all corroded and rusted, are they being looked at the same time as you're looking at trees and overhanging wires and stuff? Because it seems to me that if all of our problems were solved by changing those 2 transformers, that last one that you're talking about, that switch gear, it's going to affect 10,000 people, this is corroded as the other ones do. I don't know if that's affecting anything in wood duct, the switch gear, but it's corroded.
Is there a preventive maintenance program?
We'd have to take a good look at how that's done and what that feeds and how it.
Well, that actually raised the point about the preventive maintenance program.
Sure.
Because Colin, wasn't there an outage with one of those pins that,
Yes, yeah, on a pole.
do you remember what date that was?
That was back in January time. Remember, you lost one of the pins on, I think, on a pole in Lamington? That was one, I think, was it Chambersbrook? I forget which one.
Yeah, it could have been.
You lost a pin, and therefore you got to shorten the wire and it
Oh,
took it
that
down.
was during that storm, the weekend storm. You guys were out I think it was an hour and a half outage.
Right, and I guess the question I had at the time
I
was,
think something happened to the
one on
cross arm. The pin came out of the cross arm.
That's right.
right.
That's
So
right.
I guess the question is, are things like that being addressed on a routine basis so that, you do an equipment inspection, you realize this thing's rotting out, this thing's rusting out, and it gets changed out. I mean, do you guys look at mean time between failure and that kind of stuff for the various components?
Actually, we have a program that every 4 years we go over every circuit. Every 4 years we have a certain amount of circuits we have to inspect, and if it comes, we will catch this one, those kinds of problems.
But it seems like, just through casual observation to the audience here, they're looking at the equipment in the field and saying, this stuff is well past its prime, right? And it's contributing to the failures. Now, whether or not it's the root cause, I don't know, but it's certainly contributing. So how do we get those things addressed? Where somebody goes from your team, walks out, does the site inspections, and then marks equipment that needs to be upgraded or replaced?
What's the normal life of one of these transformers in the hills?
They are not mechanical devices, so they don't move. There's no mechanical parts to it. So we don't have a specific amount of time.
They seem to be going around different areas. They seem to be falling off.
It's when we have the failure, we replace them. Or some people
wait till the failure happens.
Right.
I have another question. When is this project you guys are doing talked about?
Well, we're waiting to hear back from the BPU.
Right, let's say it goes ahead. Will there be any
It's going to be done over a 4-year period of time.
My question is,
Sure.
will there be interruptions during this project to the hills doing your work? And will we get notification of this?
I don't think there'll be any interruptions, but if there were, we would certainly let you know. But it's going to be done, it'll be a 4-year project. Every 6 months, we're going to work on different facets of the area. And that's how right now it's worked. But we're, like I said, we're waiting at least 3 months now to hear if it's a go or not.
But do you have to wait until that's approved before you can do anything for us?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. No, please don't get that impression.
Okay.
And I just asked about the review process. How do you review all the problems? Because normally in companies where there are problems, it's reviewed every 3 months, every 2 months, whatever's going on is taken into account and a meeting is held to decide, well, this is happening here, this is happening here. How is that review process made within your organization?
You want to talk about it's about the demi, right?
Not sure.
Like Ali just said, we have the demi that every 4 months we review those outages for the customers. But we have also every year a program where we list all the circuits that have the highest, how do you call that, outages in their area, and we review them as well, and we address all the issues that we have seen on those circuits.
So in the period of time that everybody's talking about, which seems quite a long time to me, I mean, how much is likely to be addressed, say, in the next year?
No, those are regulatory programs. Like, for example, this high city, we call them high city. They must be addressed within the following year per the state. Yes?
I hear there's some people here from the telecom industry. Now, in telecom, they have redundancy with their equipment. So if there's a power failure or something, they have backup power plans. What is our redundancy with our power?
We have ability to switch over, and this is one of redundancy that we have, like tight points. We call them also tight points. For example, on the circuit where you have like 4 open points where we can tie to other circuits, and we use also some devices what we call the reclosers that allows every time that you have a power outage, you can sectionalize the circuit better. We use also fuses to prevent other areas to be affected by other customers to see the same outage as others, and that's the kind of devices that we have.
But the point is that this is manual, right? This is not
No, they are not manual. Fuses are not manual, so they react to a fault.
The switching
The switching, we have two types of switching, manual and automatic switching.
Oh, how do we get on the automatic one? Can we have that?
I have a quick
Yes.
comment, I guess, with all due respect. Much of what I've heard tonight is we'll look at, we'll study, we'll review, we'll get back to you. We had work done 6-8 months ago, a year ago. Well, those guys are gone. Don't you have records that you knew?
No, I mean, obviously, we have the records,
Talk to
but
us.
if somebody worked, you know, with Mike Terpstra, we definitely, I want to talk to Mike and say, hey, what exactly happened here?
Right, but if
And
Mike
trust
left,
me, Mike will
what would you do?
remember.
If Mike wasn't with the company anymore, you have to have a way to be able to tell us
I
where
mean,
we stand.
We have
And
everything documented on our system, absolutely.
I think what frustrates me, and I'm not speaking for everyone, I'm only speaking for myself, but if all I hear is we'll study, we'll look at, we'll review, we'll look at, we'll analyze, we'll study, we'll look at, that's not helping us with our power outage.
understand.
So we need action. We don't need study, look at, study, look at, study, look at, and then we're back here 2 years later.
I understand where
So
you're coming from.
I'm very frustrated that we've been living in the hills for, God, since 94.
No,
94 and 4-0. 89, we had no problems in Birchwood. But, you know, we've been having problems consistently for years. And it shouldn't go on this long, period. It just shouldn't go on this
When
long.
Superstorm Sandy happened, and our section didn't come on for 4 days later,
We had to call, and we were told there was only 250 people on our grid, they'll get to us. So we had a neighbor that strung across, God bless her, an actual literal extension cord from her outside outlet so that we could have a little bit of power in Long Meadow.
but that 4-day differential should have triggered some sort of action plan, and it didn't seem to do anything. It just said, oh, let it.
Right. And then they looked at the transformer last year. We were down for 8 hours. They fixed it. It has been somewhat better. But I find it kind of unacceptable that this has been a problem for years. And what's to say that 2 years from now, you guys aren't moving on somewhere, and the next bunch of people come in and say, I don't know, I have no way to get in touch with that. There's got to be a way to be able to look without contacting people that we've spoken to over the course of 5 years. It's a huge corporation.
That you're gonna get back to us in a month. We hit the deadline.
I mean, no offense.
Well, it wouldn't be a month, I get back to you in a week or two.
But no offense, my frustration is, you knew we were coming tonight, you should have had some stats on what the averages were. Really.
Right, that means your staff should be with you at this point. I mean, you knew we were gonna come here, you were talking to us. If I came in unprepared for a meeting at my job, it wouldn't be there for very long.
Well, to be honest with you,
We need, you should have had
I
kind of
thought,
reliability.
I'm new to the area, I only started in January. But I had no idea that there were that many outages to different areas. I thought I was here to speak about the last 2 outages, and that's what we were prepared for. I wasn't aware that, there was a problem with wood duct that's been going on for a year. I was not aware of that.
This is big, I know what it is. Come on.
I only started the job in January.
I don't care when you started. You should know about this now.
Obviously, I'm well aware now, and I'm well informed.
Here's my suggestion. I'm the president of the Master Association, and I would like you guys to continue to work with myself and Jackie, who's my vice president, okay, at least for our immediate neighborhood, and hopefully the others. But I have a few suggestions that I think you should take with you. And, in all of our associations, and some of you others that are on boards here understand, we have an engineering study, an official document done every so often of every piece of ownership that we have with a lifespan. Okay, so when these switch gears rot out, they should never even get to that point. It should never get to that point. You really should have a system in place, because I think this is what public service and other power companies do, so that you say, okay, this thing is going to last 30 years, we need to start looking at it in 20 and make sure that we have a system in place. Whether your systems are monitoring anything or not, I think you still need to have some kind of, eyes on that, the switch gear or whatever, and then when that does need to get fixed, I think you should be able to bridge the power so you don't have to shut people off for 8 hours. You know what I'm saying? You could put some kind of like a bypass in so that you can take the old equipment out, or if a truck is hitting a wire, and that same wire was hit, this is the second time, I think Colin alluded to that. So maybe we move the wire away from the ramp, because trucks are gonna be going on and off that ramp all the time, and when there's snow on it, it's gonna sag. And then when the power goes out, then the cable, and the telephones, and all that go out with it. So, I mean, it's a domino effect. So I think what I can offer as a community, a leader of my community, is I want you guys to work with us. I want you to contact me, how's the power going, or give us a line of communication, you know, like you can tell with Jackie, and we need to do it on Hills Drive and on Hills Island. That would be very much appreciated. We really appreciate you guys coming here and talking to us tonight, and the mayor for allowing us this forum to do it, and the township committee. So if we can do that, I think that's our best bet.
So Jeff, so from your association, you and Jackie should be points of contact?
Absolutely, yeah.
Is there anyone else from your association? Well, we'll come to Hills Village. So from Northern,
Yeah.
from Hills North,
Yeah.
anyone else?
Yeah, Jerry's welcome to do it.
Maybe they can forward a list to you, and you can forward it to them.
Right.
Right?
Hey, so Jeff,
Yeah.
as Stacy just said,
Yeah.
we can be the conduit. Get me the names from your association or from your master,
Right.
specifically with Wood Duck identified. We'll forward that to Tom.
Yep. Okay.
Hills Village, Dawn. Do you want to, you're good with being the contact for Hills Village? Okay. And do you guys need any differentiation between the master associations and which neighborhoods?
Just,
The locale.
We can fill you in on some of
yeah,
it.
just provide a couple of the streets so we can look closer up.
I give you a map, I got all that stuff.
Sure.
I have lots of stuff.
I have a question for you. Would it be possible to get a single line diagram that shows how this area is fed, the different circuits and the different switches, just like a basic, that would help us understand how each occurrence
That's great.
affected,
Good comment.
yeah,
Yep.
single line diagram
We could show you, but we wouldn't be able to give it to you.
to the association.
Right, for security reasons, we're not allowed to give that stuff. We could definitely sit with you and show it to you, absolutely.
So you can memorize it.
It's, well, there's right-of-ways in many different ways, like you have one on your sidewalk. There's a right-of-way where you can do what you need to do. I believe the town owns like 10 feet on the sidewalk, so if they want to expand the roadway, they do it in their right-of-way. We own the right-of-way and other people own the right-of-way, but once we go outside of that right-of-way, we can't trim any further.
What is your right of way on given road?
Oh, no, we're more worried about right-of-ways on trees. That's our problem. Right now, we're doing 15 feet, we want to go to 25.
So Tom, on that issue about the right of way and where you are in the regulatory process.
Yes.
So what, is the request to go from 15 to 20 or more than that?
It's 25, I believe.
15 to 25?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're
So-
not sure, but I believe it's 25.
And you're still, this is
Still
pending.
waiting to hear back from the BPU on that.
So one of the takeaways that, from both the township committee and the residents, that if this is something that, that BPU would be receptive to receiving comments from ratepayers, that to reduce outages,
Right.
that we all support expanding the right-of-way for additional trimming. Is that something that would be helpful for BPU to receive?
We had a meeting in December in Morristown. It was a public meeting in a public forum, and we had 19 come out and speak on our behalf, but we had like 8 from Chatham Borough alone who didn't want us to do any more tree trimming.
So for all the folks here, you in favor of more tree trimming to reduce outages?
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe you can send a letter on behalf of your residents and the Hills. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine, we can talk further about that.
You had also mentioned before the coordination between you and Verizon. Verizon has the lower lines, you have the upper lines. I remember in prior discussions that there was very little coordination. The tree trimming for one would stop here, the tree trimming for the other would stop here. Sometimes they would talk, most of the times
I don't know
not.
how they do their tree trimming. I know how we do ours. But we've been, I mean, we've definitely worked a lot better together in the recent years. We've been asked to, and we need to.
Okay.
We had an outage a couple of months ago where Verizon couldn't get there, and we ended up replacing their poles for them. So we are definitely doing a much better job of truly working on it.
In our areas, are the poles owned by Verizon or by JCP&L?
Throughout the state, it's like 51-49. It's very close.
Okay.
We either own them or Verizon.
So it's not specifically on a street? It could be every other, it could be just a group?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then United Tel has some trees as well. But yeah, it's one of them. Verizon and us are the majority owners.
So once again, on the issue of if folks should write to BPU or if there's
I would just say if one voice could be heard, if they want all right, that's fine as well, they can do that as well.
Is there, and what is the process? Is there a public comment period for the BPU application on this?
There was.
There was?
We had that.
Okay.
We're waiting to hear what happens. But I mean, once they rule, and depending on how they rule, we can talk about, if they rule against us, then we could talk about that and try and swell up some public support.
Okay.
All right? Any other questions?
Yes, a few, apparently.
Am I correct, isn't the lower hills, the lower hills down here, isn't all the wiring all underground?
You guys would be better to answer that one.
I have the same question, so that's.
We're talking about poles, but it's gotta be the poles coming into the hills. Any of the local areas, Wood Duck Pond, and some of these other areas, if all of the utilities are underground, it's the transformers, it's not the poles.
Or now.
Yeah, but eventually everybody gets fed from overhead somehow.
Yeah, but different neighborhoods that are having problems, it's not the poles.
No, it could be other equipment, that's for sure. We're not debating that or disagreeing.
And that's other equipment that isn't even checked until it's broken, right? And I take that as a...
I'm not sure that's an exact accurate statement, I would say.
Okay.
So, one question, when we have about what power, we go onto the website and report that on our street address.
Say it again.
When we have a power outage, we go online and we report it with our street address.
Yes.
Is that data kept, so that you can tell what the frequency of our power outages are over time by looking at that data?
Actually, we have data. We have records.
Okay.
Right,
Yes.
but by street?
It goes,
Yes.
yes.
It has a by street, because I wanted to ask you that too. You must be getting service level metrics and reports that show, charts and shows areas, maybe some kind of shows the cluster of areas that have the most outages?
Yes. Yes.
Is
But
that
you should be
you,
surprised
or
by
you've always
that.
had that?
Oh, we always have that.
Why wouldn't you found us to be a big problem? We're your problem children. Why didn't you see us?
I never got the answer from you. Because the hills, if in fact the hills is all underground, all the utilities, and some neighborhoods are having different problems than others, they should be looking at the green boxes or whatever to see what the problem is with those boxes. Not worrying about the feeder coming in from Route 202.
Actually, all the developments, they have some underground, and they are being fed from main lines, overhead.
And if
So
a pole goes down from a truck hitting it, I get that.
Yes.
I mean, everybody.
But
has
the
to deal with things
outages
like
that we have in
Or
record
not
for
the
most,
individual neighborhoods.
they're not coming from the undergrounds. They're coming from outside, the overhead.
So you're saying the outages are
Yeah,
here
the overhead
underground
takes us
stuff?
to the-
There is, we have underground faults.
False, but
absolutely.
not as many as.
When you get a 2,600 person outage, generally it's overhead.
Okay.
I don't know why my phone won't shut off.
So I guess I raised a question so that if Wood Duck specifically is taking outages that it's neighboring, that you're not seeing in Long Meadow, but you're
Right.
seeing specifically for Wood Duck, but if everything is being fed from overhead lines, that the differentiation between Wood Duck and Long Meadow may not be the overhead lines, it may be something else.
Oh, no, absolutely. We're definitely gonna have to look further into what's going on.
Yeah, that's like the crux of the matter. Like, why is only this section going out so much when, okay, Kings does go out a lot and the businesses along there, but Wood Duck and Four Oaks, man, you know, we're really high on the percentage of outages relative to the rest of the area.
We have to.
Didn't that change when we got two new transformers?
I think it got a little better, but it's still, right. And I have another question. I guess I could say I have another one. Maybe I could go all night, but why did it take like, I think it was 8 hours, 7.5, 8 hours to fix the last one? When I was up at 2 a.m. when at 1:46 when the power went out, I was up for hours. And I was listening to my radio, and they said all the roads were clear. So what took so long to fix that outage?
Well, you need, first of all, the time that it happened was not ideal. Okay, it's 1:44 in the morning, you gotta get your guy to get out there. He was there, like I reported, within the hour. Then we need to get the road closed, then we need to get people to come in and flag to make sure that everybody's safe. By the time all of that happens, it's a few hours later, because you gotta call the guys in.
So 8 hours, but weren't they on alert knowing we had a bad storm?
Yeah, but we don't control, like, the guys that come in and mark out and the guys that come out and flag, those aren't our employees. That's an outside contractor that we use. And then we need to get the police involved and, you know, the police, he'll tell you there might be, on a normal night, there only might be 3 guys. And then they might have to call somebody to come in and handle something of an emergency nature like that. So it's all, you know, ideally, any outage that happens early morning, midnight, late, 4 a.m., usually are a little bit more difficult because you need to get the people to come in and take care of it. You know, we do run trouble shifts, which are 3 to 11 and 11 to 7, but if 4 or 5 poles go down, we don't have that capability to fix that right away.
When you call back in on a ticket, like you get your number, you call in, I always write down my ticket number.
Sure.
If you call back, does it switch to a new ticket number, or like are you resetting the clock as to when you called in that outage?
If you called in for another outage, you're creating another ticket.
No, if I'm calling for the same, the outage happened at 1:46. 2 hours later, I call in again, just to see what the status is, like, you know, what the estimated time to repair is. Is that creating a new ticket, so it's not showing my area being out as long?
I can answer that. I can answer.
Oh, yeah?
Because I do that.
Oh,
When you call back the second time, the person, if you get a person, will tell you from your phone number, you know that this is already.
okay, that's when you get a human
reported.
being.
Is this a new outage or are you reporting the same?
Okay.
And when you say, I'm reporting the same, you say we have nothing further to tell you at this time. And that's where the frustration.
But what if you don't get a human being? Does it create a new
Sometimes it'll
ticket?
pick up a second outage, sometimes it'll trace your phone and not do it. Like, we have people that, if they have a home phone and a cell phone and another phone, they'll make 3 different calls from those numbers, thinking that that's gonna help matters when it really doesn't really help matters.
Well, it doesn't, because it still wants the
Right.
billing telephone number anyway, but, because I was concerned that it's not logging into your reports the actual time that the outage happened.
No, it's recorded.
Okay, so
It's
you still
recorded.
have that initial
Yes,
point of call?
yes.
Okay.
When the outage is created, you cannot remove it
But
until
if you-
it's been.
For example, if you have ticket number 123, we can see on that ticket that if we drill deeper into it, we can see 417 people called on that ticket.
Yeah, 'cause I
We can
tried-
actually see who called.
Right.
And then we have the callback system, and we know who needs the callbacks, and we can see all of that information. Yes.
Master Control Center?
Yes, we have the DCC at 300 Madison Avenue.
And does that look at primarily substations go down?
No, our substation is now being run out of Ohio, out of the ACC.
So they monitor that
Everything that's
substation.
distribution is now being done out of Marshall.
And at what level do you go down to, not transformer level, like in our area?
We
See
could
if it-
just.
If a transformer goes out?
Yeah, that would be distribution, that would be considered.
Or that would be a telephone call from individuals saying that I don't have anything?
Right, but we would normally see that just based on the number of people that would report it. We would
Any thoughts of going to sensors on transformers, you know, especially critical? I'm just, long-term planning, I'm just looking, you know.
I mean, there is a lot of, I was in a meeting a couple weeks ago, we were talking about performance enhancement, and they're actually talking about automated metering. I know that the Pennsylvania board pushed Pennsylvania to do that, and just from that, they can tell how many people out.
Exactly.
But, you know, here in New Jersey, we're unionized, so that may take, I wouldn't want to speak on when or if that even that gets implemented. I wouldn't want to speak on that.
Is there like a 50-year plan? And I won't be around for that.
I can tell you that there's definitely there's a 5-year plan.
For Berry plant to, you know.
The most I can speak on is a 5-year plan. I just worked on that a couple of months ago, so I can tell you.
We used to tell them we have 50-year plans.
No, we do 5-year plan.
Okay, that's it.
And I think we're basically, I think everybody here would agree where substation built is pretty far out already. I mean, we have numerous amount of substations already.
Well, I mean about burying plants. That's not buried already.
I mean, we're constantly looking at making changes, but I wouldn't put a number or a year on that.
I go to Europe and stuff, and they don't have any wires above that.
Yeah,
You know?
I've understood that. Apparently, they don't have that in the state of
Well, they probably
Minnesota
help their
either.
house during the war, so.
Yeah. And just so you know, as a point, when we did do our Morristown meeting in December, a group of people wanted to see everything to go down underground. And we were trying to get some numbers and trying to figure out how much that would cost. Depending on the mile and the terrain and what is going on there and how much equipment, could be anywhere from $500,000 to $2.5 million a mile.
Yeah. Now, I didn't know if there was a long-term plan to do that and put money away for that instead of, you know, say, okay.
At this time, I mean, that's all just talk. I mean, you hear some people that said that Governor Murphy would like to see that happen. But that cost was gonna be an enormous cost.
Oh,
I know there's an island in South Carolina, Pawley Island, where the whole island is underground. I believe it was a 10-year program, and the homeowner had to pay $3,500 a year for 10 years. It's almost like putting in a new sewer system.
So,
It's
once again, those
definitely-
expenses would be borne eventually by the ratepayers.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely, yes.
So in terms of funding though, and this team that meets every 4 months, you had said you were gonna look into the wood duct for a section.
We'll look at that tomorrow. We'll look at
Right.
either early tomorrow or Wednesday morning, depending on our house schedules, but that'll be the first thing that we
But
work
then,
on.
how would that get funded outside of some bigger program or something?
Oh, there's no need for funding or anything on that.
Okay, you
If
find
we
out.
go out there and find out that equipment B and C need to be replaced,
Replace it?
we replace it, and that's
Oh,
all
we
that
love you.
happens.
Okay.
Well, no, we have to, obviously, we'll have to look, see, Henry will have to go out there, we'll get the line guys out there, and we'll look and see what we can do.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, cool.
Hey, you'll be the one that gets all the love.
There'll be more than a few Henrys getting love on this. It's not, I mean, honestly, I just took this over in January. I was not aware that there were that many outages in some spots that there were. I really love them.
That's a concern. The fact that this has been going on for years, and I'm glad you started your job, and thank you, Mayor, for having a good reputation.
Right.
But it's a really big concern that nobody in this, knew this problem about the Duck Pond or Four Oaks.
Well, I wouldn't say nobody, but,
Well, you know, and you're coming here tonight.
right, I mean, I wasn't aware that, you had.
But I know myself, if I'm presenting, and I'm doing what I do for a living, if I'm presenting, I'm preparing before I'm presenting.
Right.
So now I feel even worse that nobody has cared about the duck pond.
Well, I don't think caring is, I don't think that's the right word.
No attention being given.
No critical.
Right.
That's what I think everybody's frustrated with.
And that's all about
Things
you.
need to be recorded and managed, you move on, the problem still exists. what is that consumer on for you guys that it, that
I
it's not?
understand where you're coming from, and definitely it's obviously we need to do a better job communicating.
And we do, I think, by having the designees from Wood Duck and Four Oaks and from Hills Village, you know, we can assure you that they'll be, with the Township Committee acting as a conduit, we know how to get Tom and we'll know how to get Henry and Ali as well, and make sure that that the next follow-up, right, isn't a year from now, that the next follow-up is a few weeks from now or days from now, and that it may be emails, and Jeff and Jackie and Dawn can disseminate the information to the different associations and from there to the residents. But that let's keep this momentum going, and let's deal with these issues as we move forward and get these repairs done.
Thank you very much for your time.
Tom, I think you had one other question?
Sure.
Ma'am in the back, did you have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I've heard in the grapevines that there's 400 condo units going through the planning board in Bridgewater. And I heard they want to put villas on our grid. That's what I heard. And my son lives in Bridgewater, so that's where the information came from. And they said they want to use the grid in Bedminster. How does that work? Well, we're having a problem with our electric, with our power. There's 400 units going up.
I mean, if that were the case, we would know, but I haven't heard anything about that. I know, I can tell you that I'm working on something with Chatham Township, where they're doing like 300 units, but I haven't heard anything on that. Yeah, I haven't heard anything on that. I don't think they've come to us yet at all. It's maybe all preliminary planning.
Okay, Tom, Henry, and Ali, thank you very much for coming out tonight. Thank all residents for coming out here. We'll take a 5-minute recess. Let anyone who wants to stay, you're obviously, please stay. Karna, we can always have more Karna. And we are back on. And once again, we thank our residents for coming out, and also to JCP&L. And it was once again a great Bedminster moment when we had a lot of folks who professed not to be experts, but seemed to actually have a fair degree of expertise in the way electronics and communications and utilities work. So that was great. And here's hoping that we can work with JCP&L to make those improvements and repairs expeditiously. So that leaves us into the meeting on public comments. So twice each night, we open the mics up here for public comments. If there's any members of the public that have any comments on any issue that is not on the agenda, please come up now. There'll be a second opportunity later in the meeting. Seeing none, monthly report discussions by subcommittee chairs, and we will start to the right with Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Had a DPW meeting. We sat down, we talked with some folks who responded to our posting for the job site. I think John did a real nice job. He picked out 3 really good candidates. I think he's got a tough decision to make there, but one that I don't think would be a bad decision either way. We'll continue to monitor that. We've got a meeting coming up for the other consulting position that we've listed, so we'll take care of that. That was supposed to happen earlier, what's going to happen after the meeting. And I'm happy and excited to show up later this week for the historic preservation meeting, so I'll get on that. I just spoke with Don March about some of the dates for some of the Hills Master Associations, so those are now on the calendar. We'll get those in and certainly try to continue the dialogue that we started here with the electric company and any other issues that come up. So stuff's in the hopper, but right now, just plodding through.
Good. Colin.
Mayor, thank you. Good evening. Just 2 quick items. Our tech committee had a meeting to determine the upgrade strategy and the budget for the township's desktop computers. That's important given the fact that Windows 7 is sunsetting at 1/1 of next year, and you want to make sure you upgrade because you don't have any exposure to future cyber attacks. So we're looking into that. We're going to do that in a very cost-effective manner. Secondly, and this kind of crosses DPW, tech, as well as EC, we're looking to take advantage of the New Jersey Clean Energy Direct Install Program, which provides economic incentives to municipalities to upgrade their lighting and HVAC systems. We had a meeting with their representative last week. Tim Walter from the Environmental Commission was there as well. There's an opportunity to significantly improve our lighting and potentially our HVAC system, but more so on the lighting. We're going to do an energy audit this week, and then John, Judy, Doug, and I will review the numbers and look at the payback period and make a recommendation back to the Township Committee in terms of next steps. And Board of Health is meeting on Thursday this week, and that's all I have.
Great. Colin, when you said energy audit, so how is that being performed?
So they will have a representative come out to take a look at what we currently have installed in terms of HVAC as well as lighting. Lighting is probably the biggest thing, because they'll look at the light fixtures we currently have, which are mostly fluorescent, identify the number of fixtures, the types of fixtures, and then figure out if you replace those with LEDs, what the cost savings would be, as well as obviously the cost to replace those. The way the state program works is 70% of the cost is covered by the state, township puts up 30%, and it can be capitalized. So we can, factor that into our budget.
So just for example, if you look at these lights with these fluorescent tubes, how do they change out the whole fixture and the ballast?
It depends how the fixture is done, but typically yes. So then you just do a direct replacement with an LED fixture. Okay. And you pull out the existing fluorescent ballast or fixture. And most of the time, I think, John, when we were talking about this with the rep last week, I believe most of the fixtures, including some of the fixtures down in your DPW building, are eligible to be upgraded, but they will look at the specifics this week. We're also looking at the police building as well, see what we can do there.
Great.
Thank you, Mayor. As Doug mentioned, he's now going to be the primary liaison for historic preservation. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
I have a conflict on the Thursday evening, so I cannot attend the meetings anymore, but I wrote them a note today, letting them know that Doug will be there on Thursday. And also, as we mentioned, we have a meeting with Judy for our HR consultant. So we'll have more news on that later.
Renee?
I had a meeting, I was the representative to the Environmental Commission last week, and Colin attended, and you were there for a couple minutes, and they talked about a few things. Let's see, another moth night will happen, June 28th, hopefully is the date. Michelle is working with Raritan Headwaters to do well testing, hopefully June 1st-ish time. And the committee got to review the Kirby property to talk about the first steps, or next to last steps before Land Use Board, about dividing that property into 6 units. And the committee decided to waive the EIS, so it went right to Land Use Board.
Great. Thank you. So I will start with that, with the Land Use Board meeting. And at the Land Use Board meeting, the Kirby property was approved for a 6-unit subdivision with lots ranging from the small side of about a little over 11 acres to about 25 acres. So that's 108, 110 acres for the total property into 6 lots. And we remarked at the Land Use Board that hopefully this is the end of a long saga regarding the Kirby property. The Kirby property, as many of the folks up here know, was the subject of a lawsuit maybe about 20 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, where the Kirby family challenged Bedminster's R10 zone. Bedminster was successful, and that litigation really cemented the R10 and led a strong way in preserving what we have here in Bedminster and keeping the rural side of Bedminster rural. And then obviously more recently was the solar farm application, which was withdrawn a few years ago, and dividing the property into 6 lots, all of which were compliant with the 10-acre zone, and as we heard from the applicants, will probably be developed consistent with a lot of other properties in Bedminster. It could be agricultural use, could be equestrian or equine, and long-term, I think this is appropriate for that property. And talking to some of the residents who came out, and there was probably about 20 people or so that were here at that meeting, and they were pleased because they didn't get a solar farm property, they didn't get a intense development. They got something that was consistent with the R10 zone, and the neighbors were pleased, and hopefully this is a good use for the property moving forward. On other matters, I sent an email around to the Environmental Commission, Ag Advisory Commission, and actually I think the Board of Health as well, is that DEP had announced proposed rules regarding Category 1 waters. Bedminster is affected because two of the streams that are identified for Category 1 designation, the Lamington River on Pottersville, in the Pottersville area, and also the North Branch up by the fairgrounds over here. So there may be impacts to residents. I was on the phone with folks from DEP today about some questions about the Category 1 designation. If it actually does go through, what would that mean to the property owners and the residents in those areas? And DEP said, if you please send us over your questions and comments, we'll respond to them right away, and I'll be coordinating both with EC and with Ag and Board of Health to generate maybe a list of questions that we can throw down to DEP and get those answered. Farmers Market, it wouldn't be a meeting without mentioning Farmers Market. We have a meeting tomorrow. We've completed the registration packet, which has been sent out to a number of farmers and vendors, and we've actually already started receiving responses. The meeting tomorrow, we'll talk about reviewing those applications that have already been submitted and identifying potential farmers and vendors that we may want to fill in the mix. And Judy, with that, I'll turn it over to you for administrator's report.
Yes, so as you all know, we have finished the budget work session. And CFO and myself reviewed all the numbers and sent them over to the auditor for final review before we introduce on April 1st, which will be our next meeting. We'll have the budget introduction. The state reviews municipal budgets every 3 years in full. This year is our year for full review. So we hope to have our budget back approved by the state by the first meeting in May. It could be delayed, but we hope it should be approved by that time. Some of the highlights of this year's budget, we're very proud of the fact that not only are we under the 2% cap, or under the 1.9% CPI, we're at 0.7% increase over last year, which amounts to about $22 in the municipal portion of the budget per average taxpayer in Bedminster. It is a very slight increase, but it is still an increase. Recently, the Department of Community Affairs released two lists showing what the average property tax bill and the average property tax increase was. This is, of course, on last year's information. And Bedminster, this is a list you want to be on the bottom of the list. We are 438 out of 566 towns with an average of $6,182 for the average tax bill in Bedminster. And even lower, which is a good thing, our tax rate is 2.04% down, negative. So we're only 545 out of 566 towns. So the lower on that list, the better. So we will give a full presentation of all the information on our budget probably at the April 15th meeting. We'll have a presentation, a PowerPoint, putting all the highlights together. And probably our auditor will be at one of those meetings as well to answer any questions as well. So that's a little budget information. Other good news, the hike and bike bridge that was closed is now open again. We had it repaired a week ago last Monday. The repair actually didn't take very long. It took only about half a day, right, John? Mm-hmm. And so it is now fully open. There's still a piece of equipment parked down there at the bridge. They're just waiting until the ground firms up a little bit so they don't make a mess of the ground. It's pretty muddy, but it is fully repaired and open. The repairs for that that aren't covered by insurance will be paid for out of our open space trust account, so it does not impact the taxpayers. The police department has a new project going on over in the police headquarters.
Maybe you saw it in the Burnsville News last week. It's called Project Medicine Drop. They have a box that looks similar to a mailbox that people can just dispose of any of their unused or old prescription drugs. Chief, you want to mention anything about that?
Sure. So, partnership with the New Jersey Attorney General's Office as well as Division of Consumer Affairs. Project was worked on by Sergeant Francesco Bernardo. Took a while coming. We applied for, it's a free box. It's mounted with the assistance of Mr. Mance in the lobby of the police department. And now we will receive old capsules, pills, dog medication, and patches 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if the lobby's not open, it's just a matter of an officer will come back to allow access. It's an anonymous program, and you know, if somebody's coming and bringing pill bottles, they want to make sure they take their information off. And then monthly, we'll take it, we'll package it, we'll weigh it, and then it's up to us to take it to one of the designated disposals and to get rid of it. But, you know, we report back to the state. So I think it's a good effort, and, you know, globally, you know, a lot of towns are doing this now, so.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
And just lastly, emergency services, our 2 fire companies and our first aid squad have come together. They're having their annual dinner, and it's on April 6th this year. And I just want to remind you, they're asking for an RSVP by the 23rd of this month, so make sure you've got that invitation to respond. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Judy. Judy, we'll have plenty more opportunities to express appreciation for the work that went into the budget, but so we might as well start tonight. So I want to thank everyone, Judy and John and Chief, for coming to every single budget meeting, even the one that went to 12:30. And even the one that went to 11:40, and for staying with us and working through the budget. And it's not just line by line.
Oh, it was line
It's
by
line by line, and then we go over the line by line again and again. And you know, really, for you know, for my fellow committee members and for you guys, we really take a very hard approach, looking at the lines, thinking expansively for what we have to do this year, but also for what we have to do the next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. So I just want to remind everyone that we do take, it's not just, hey, what can we do to cut this year, but making sure that we have everything in place that what we need to do to run the town for the ensuing years as well. And, you know, you guys were just terrific in answering questions and making recommendations and entertaining some wild ideas that some of us threw out there for you. So thank you all.
It's definitely a team project.
Yes, for sure. Okay, moving on. Introduction of ordinances. We have none, but we do have a public hearing on an ordinance tonight. Ordinance 2019-001, an ordinance increasing the regular members on the Historic Preservation Commission from 5 to 7. Excuse me, I just have to go find. Let's see. Okay, so this ordinance has been introduced. This is our public hearing, so this is the opportunity for the public to ask questions, the Township Committee to ask questions about it. Just a reminder, one of the genesis of this ordinance is, as our boards and commissions are becoming more active, just as the Environmental Commission has done, really paving the way with, I think, we've got the 3 chairs of the Environmental Commission, or the last 3 chairs right here. Taking on more roles, being active. The same issue is that we're presenting that to the other boards as well. Hey, these guys got to, you know, look what environmental is doing. You guys should be doing the same thing. And that's what goes with Board of Health and Historic Pres. And Historic Preservation is already taking that taking up the challenge and is coordinating with both the library and the school, and it's just going to require a little bit more manpower than they currently have. So the idea of moving from 5 to 7 gives it more manpower to deal with having volunteers take an active role in whether it's education or running programs, but that's something that Historic Press can do. Also going to 7, I think, creates a more robust dialogue at the different commissions. So that was really what was pushing this ordinance forward. And with that, can we have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
If I could just make a quick comment, since this is a land management ordinance, copies of the ordinance have to go out to every town that touches Bedminster Township, as well as the Somerset County Planning Board. It also goes to the Land Use Board for review, which they did at their last meeting, and determined that the ordinance is I always get this wrong, not inconsistent with the master plan.
Correct.
So I do have documentation to that regard, and also a response from Somerset County Planning Board that they reviewed it as well. And then we'll send another round out once this, if it is adopted this evening, and we'll go out again.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, I believe I spoke to John Bellato about this as well before the meeting, and I understand there's going to be an amendment to the second to last paragraph to remove the reference to the zoning board of adjustment.
To the planning board.
And that is not a material change, so it doesn't require reintroduction. We can still adopt it this evening.
Right, at the Land Use Board, there was a discussion that made reference to, I'm sorry.
It's the second to last sentence, I believe.
You're right, planning board or zoning board, and we have a combined board that we call colloquially the Land Use Board, but as Tom Collins and John Bellato noted, the official term is the planning board. So where it says or zoning board of adjustment, that will actually be deleted.
That's been removed from the final
And
draft.
that is not a significant change that requires reintroduction. So I guess we're in public comment, or sorry, public hearing for the ordinance. Any questions, comments? Can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Again, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, Judy, so I take it we need a
Motion to adopt.
motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second?
This will be a roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 matters on the consent agenda. Unless there's a reason to pull anything off, we will, can I have a motion to move forward with and approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Well, is this, I'm sorry. It's okay, but 35, is that the temporary funding so that we can exist
The
until our budget's
authorizing
adopted?
emergency temporary, yes. So, beginning of the year at the reorganization meeting, we allotted 26.5% of the 2018 budget number to start running the town for the first quarter of the year. As of last Friday, that money is ultimately gone. So we need to now allot the next 25% of our budget, and just based on what last year's numbers were, before we, actually adopt our budget. So
And that's standard operating procedure every
that's
year.
standard, normal, what we do. And then the other one is just a grant that the police department just received for $3,300 for distracted driving, so.
So I'll make the motion.
I second the motion.
Okay.
Again, roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Ms. Morosky?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
Resolution 2019-34 is a resolution to appoint a new deputy court administrator for the shared municipal court of Bedminster Township, P-PAC Gladstone Borough, and Burnsville Borough. Judy, do you want to just do a quick explanation?
Yeah, we recently, our deputy court administrator actually resigned and left us to go to another town, February 1st. So we did notice the meeting, or the position. We had interviews here made up of representatives from Burnsville, P-PAC Gladstone, Bedminster, as well as the administrative office of the courts. and Judge House. So we had 8 people doing interviews. We had 5 candidates that were ultimately interviewed. We had over 12 applications. And we did end up promoting a violations clerk here in town who was already in our court. She was a former court administrator from another town that joined us last year, so she now has moved up. We do have a vacancy that we will fill temporarily. We're not moving forward yet with filling that full content. We're still reviewing. So
Okay.
that's where we're at.
Any questions or comments?
Is the compensation commensurate with the past positions?
Yes, so she moved up to what the previous deputy administrator was at. And it's within our approved budget for this year.
Okay, motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Again, roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Dickey?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
Next is approval of the bill list. Can we have a motion to approve the bill list pending review of individual invoices?
So moved.
I'll second.
And another roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Dickey?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Okay.
Discussion items. Is there anything that Township Committee members want to discuss?
Mayor, we have the issue of the Lamington River project and the approval. Don't know if you want to discuss that at this point. Do we need an overview for the folks in the audience or on tape, or? So just a quick one. This came to our attention nearly 2 years ago. The applicant, Flint Hill Preserve, is making an application to the DEP to make improvements to sections of the Lamington River adjacent to McCann Mill and Black River Road that will improve ecological conditions. The project has been subject to numerous public meetings, both from the Township Committee as well as the Environmental Commission. We've had meetings with impacted residents, multiple site walkthroughs, including those with DEP, excuse me, NRCS, and the contractor Urbani Fisheries, as well as a review by the Township Engineer. It was previously introduced under Resolutions 2018-072 and 2017-093, which stipulated the conditions for final approval and access to the property for grant application. The applicant has satisfied the requirements by signing the resolution, providing the required escrow, as well as an acceptable certificate of insurance. I'll just check, Joe and Judy, is there anything else to add to that?
Yeah, John Gordo reviewed, what was required. No new resolution was required that had been done previously. The question was the certificate of insurance, the escrow account, and the signed documents, which we have now received, so we're ready to go.
So the recommendation would be that we approve as one of the property owners so that they can go forward and make their application in DEP.
Okay.
I have the forms here tonight. You can sign them after the meeting, I guess.
Okay. And so we had already reviewed and approved this. We're just further in the process than we were last time.
Right.
So they've satified
Yeah,
some of the
the
issues they needed.
Says,
Subject to.
subject to
Right,
final
sorry,
review,
right.
yes.
Right.
Okay.
That's where we are.
Great. Will do. Thank you.
New business. Do we have any matters for new business? See none. Old business. Short-term rentals. There was an article this Sunday, the New York Times, actually it was in the travel section, and it mentioned, I think it was Miami, and how in the residential zone in Miami, they actually had inspectors from the city going through Airbnb and other websites and knocking on doors and asking folks if they were there through Airbnb, and if they were on short-term rentals in a residential zone, they were being asked to leave, and the property owners were being assessed fines. And so it's an email, actually, so John Blardo and I actually traded some messages about that. And, it's just, once again, this heightens the scrutiny of short-term stays in residential neighborhoods. We've talked about here that we're still really not quite sure of what we want to have in Bedminster. And it's the competing forces of, if you have property and you're going to do it once or twice, is that an inconvenience versus the inconvenience to the neighbors and neighborhood in which you or the unit is located, changing what is a residential character to something that is more akin to a commercial character or a hotel-type operation. It's something that we're going to continue to keep our eye on, and you know, if anyone does not have the article, I can certainly distribute it and email it around so everyone can get a chance to look at it. Engine braking, I have nothing to report on engine braking. Colin or Doug or anyone else? Nope.
Signs work.
Pluckman Park.
I was just gonna say, John, how long can we keep that sign up?
So farmer
Yeah, when's the farmer's market?
Oh, good.
Fest or farmer's market or...
So we got a little runway left.
Yes. Pluckman Park. Judy, do you have any update on the discussions that were held with the representatives from Treetop?
I spoke with code enforcement today, and we were out there meeting with some of the residents earlier this evening. There was an email received today that referenced some permits that were submitted to our code enforcement. They were submitted, but there was supposed to be a meeting to review those permits and some of the information that was lacking, that was still needed to be submitted. And the property manager for the property did not come in last week as they were supposed to. So we're still waiting for that follow-up with some of the information that's missing from the permit package. So they had a preliminary review, and, oh, we still need this, this, and this. Okay, I'll come in and meet with you and go over that. That didn't happen. The person didn't come in. So we hope to schedule that this week.
Doug, do you want to talk about the our site visit this afternoon?
Sure. Mayor and I went over to Pluckman Park to respond to some of the complaints from some of the owners and renters over there. The only thing I can really describe it as is there must be some settling going on, because the topography of the ground which you walk on, there's nothing that's consistent or stable. Lips all over the place. It's just overall, I mean, the overall condition, if anybody goes over there and looks at it, it's just shoddy. It's desperate need of paint. You've got wood shingles, half on buildings, half off. None of the lights appear to work. If they do work, they give out absolute bare minimum of lumens. It's a disgrace. It really is. It's a disgrace. And I don't know what we can do from a township level. We can certainly go to construction issues and health and safety issues, but to me, there's just no pride and ownership in that place. And it's in need of drastic improvement.
And these are really our most vulnerable residents that we have in Bedminster. They are senior citizens. It's an age-restricted development. It is affordable. These folks are living on fixed incomes, and they have no alternative. They have no alternative. They're at the mercy of a distant landlord who, frankly, we've sent code enforcement and zoning out there multiple times. Repairs were supposed to have been made in late fall. They were delayed because of the weather. And here we are approaching the end of winter and beginning of spring, and we're still waiting to see repairs happen. Judy, I just, once again, put it back to construction and zoning and ask them to take a hard look at what's out there. The very few repairs that I had observed, and with Doug this afternoon, from my prior walkthrough just a few months ago, minimal, and something needs to be done. A lot of the residents there are they're concerned about retribution. So the two guys in suits walking around, and only a few residents actually wanted to be seen with us for fear that the property manager might identify, oh, those guys were, talking to those those guys in suits, something must be up. But we, we were, the ones we did talk to, certainly have the sense of all the residents, and there's concern, and I think we do have a path forward, and some of that path forward may involve talking to legal aid, and just as we did tonight, convening folks from the Hills to hear from JCP&L, one of the things that we can do as a township committee is, even if it's not necessarily within our direct jurisdiction on landlord-tenant issues, right? We can certainly intervene where we do have jurisdiction on construction and safety issues, but on straight landlord-tenant issues, we may not get involved, but we can certainly act as a convener. And if we can bring in legal aid to work with the residents in looking at some of the straight landlord-tenant issues, that is something that we should pursue. And Judy, I do want to thank you very much.
Yeah, I spoke with the woman from Legal Aid last Friday. Actually, I reached out to the county first to see what arm of the county government might handle this. They said they really didn't have anybody in Somerset County, but they did have an agency that could help us. Within an hour, I got a phone call from the one attorney from Legal Aid. She said, let me know when you're ready to meet. I'll be there for them. So because they are, it is an affordable housing project, they would be covered under a grant, and there would be no charge to them for that representation. So the woman was very nice. So.
Great. I think Doug and I will get you, I have the name of the contact person, and they certainly did not want to have a meeting there. So Doug and I offered up this room for that meeting. So I think we'll work with you after the meeting, get you some names, and try to schedule that.
And just, Mayor, on the point that we can control docket, we can control deadlines, we can control deliveries, we can control remediation on construction. I'd like a very clear message to be sent from this dais to our construction department that stop messing around, get these guys in, we mean business, and we want action. Because too many times it's, the dog ate my homework, I'll get it in next week. And we're beyond that. I mean, the state and the condition of this property is beyond poor. And we may not have jurisdiction over all of it, but that which we do, we need to send a very clear message that we mean business and enough is enough, and let's get this thing done. So I don't want any more extensions given, I don't want any more courtesies given, I want them,
That
their
message has been delivered.
feet dragged through the fire, and if we have to involve the courts, we'll involve the courts. It's that simple.
Thank you, Doug. Message delivered.
Message delivered.
Good. Public comments. This is the second time that mic is open for anyone to come up here and make a comment, question. Seeing none. Township Committee comments. We do have an executive session. We will not be taking any action after the executive session. So quickly, let's Township Committee comments. Once again, Mr. Stevenson.
Friday, folks, come by. The 8th grade faculty games going on. It's a great event. It's the hit of the year. I think it's standing room only, usually at the gym, but it will start promptly at 6:30. I guarantee you the kids will be well coached. They may not win, but they'll be ready to go.
Coach Doug.
Thank you, Coach Doug. Right.
We have the Doug part, now we have Coach Doug. It's all about Doug.
It's all about Doug.
Committeeman Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted, for the record and for the folks watching, to say thank the members of the public came out tonight. It's an important issue. Folks, we're here to serve you. We serve at your pleasure. And anytime you can help us identify an issue that's problematic, be it JCP&L tonight, Pluckman Park issue that we're going to work aggressively, we're here to do that type of work, and we're happy to do it. That's why we're here. So thank you for coming out, and keep us posted in terms of other things that we can do.
Great comments.
Thank you, Mayor.
I agree. It was great to have company tonight in this room. Sometimes we feel very lonely, but thank you for members of the public for sticking it out the whole meeting. I think that our public, they're very happy with Bedminster, but when you're not, and when things are going on, we need to know, because if you don't come and tell us or shoot us an email or call us, we don't know. So just as Tom said, he wasn't totally aware, but now he is, and hopefully he'll come back with some answers. So, thank you.
Good.
And I just want to reiterate what Colin and Stacy said, but don't wait so long. If you have an issue, come and address it with us like as soon as you have it. That way we can take care of it and may not affect other people in town. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have no further comments. We will head to, I'm sorry, we will need a motion to move to executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Aye.
We will be back.
I did.
Bill list? Pay the bills.
What's the second part?
Okay, we're back on.
Okay, we are back on. It is 10:31. We are back from executive session. There's no action that we are taking following the executive session. We have a motion to adjourn for the night.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good luck, don't say too late.
Elvis has left the building.
I'm hungry.
I'm getting ready to leave, and I just realized. All right, Judy, come on, let's go.
I got